the sound of steel striking steel, the cold, calculated march of soldiers, an unyielding voice commanding order. This was the world Frederick the Great carved out a realm, ruled not by sentiment, but iron discipline. His story is not one of mythic heroism, but a profound study in power's psychological weight and the subtle erosion of a man beneath the crown he forged. Frederick was born into the rigid austerity of the Prussian royal family in 1712, a child marked by both privilege and profound insecurity. His father, Frederick William I, was an infamously harsh ruler, known as the Soldier King, who valued military precision above all else. The young Frederick's early years were shadowed by brutal expectations and emotional neglect, shaping a psyche steeped in vulnerability and a desperate need for approval. His own passions, especially for music and philosophy, were stifled by a father obsessed with discipline and martial prowess. This oppressive environment planted seeds of internal conflicted tension between the man he wished to become and the man demanded of him. When Frederick ascended to the throne in 1740, he inherited a fragmented Europe and a state poised for military expansion. His rise was swift and marked by his first major act of defiance in Silesia from Austria, igniting the War of Austrian Succession. Here, Frederick's brilliance as a military strategist emerged, yet it was underpinned by relentless discipline. He did not tolerate failure, either from others or himself. His army was transformed into a model of precision and efficiency. Yet, beneath this veneer of control lay an intense psychological drive to redefine both himself and Prussia. The turning point in Frederick's reign was not a battlefield victory, but a personal transformation triggered by isolation during prolonged warfare. His forward-thinking ideas on governance and enlightenment clashed with the harsh realities of ruling through fear and rigidity. The strain of power isolated him from honest counsel. Surrounded by yes-men and fearful subordinates, his judgment began to cloud. The man who once admired Voltaire and championed enlightened reform found himself increasingly insulated, viewing criticism as betrayal. This shift marked a subtle but profound change. Frederick's decisions became more autocratic, more inflexible, reflecting a psyche hardened by years of siege, both literal and figurative, at the peak of his power. Frederick was the embodiment of martial discipline and enlightened absolutism. His reforms modernized Prussia's bureaucracy and legal system. Yet, the same iron discipline that made his armies formidable also permeated his governance style. His psychological transformation was evident in his relationships. Once curious and somewhat approachable, he withdrew emotionally, preferring cold pragmatism. The toll of unyielding self-imposed standards and isolation fractured his inner world. Underneath the heroic military persona, there was a man deeply alienated from himself and others. This shift in perception and behavior subtly foreshadowed his decline. Despite military successes, cracks appeared in his legacy. His strict demands bred resentment among his generals and subjects. The very discipline that steeled Prussia also sowed seeds of rigidity that could not easily adapt to changing times. As his reign waned, Frederick's health deteriorated, and with it, his capacity for open-minded rule. His later years were marked by increasing paranoia and withdrawal, signaling the psychological cost of absolute power. The collapse, though slow, was inevitable. After his death in 1786, Prussia faced new challenges that tested the brittle foundations of his reign. The rigid structures he erected struggled against evolving political landscapes. Yet the consequences of his iron discipline left a dual legacy: a powerful state and a cautionary tale of power's corrosive nature. His reign illuminates how the very traits that build empires— discipline, control, isolation— can also unravel the individual who wields them. Psychologically, Frederick presents a fascinating study. His early insecurities fueled a relentless drive for control. This need translated into an unyielding discipline, not just militarily, but personally. Power intensified these traits, turning initial insecurities into rigid perfectionism and emotional withdrawal. The environment of fear he created mirrored his internal state, a feedback loop reinforcing isolation and distrust. His insulation from criticism deprived him of grounding perspectives, skewing his judgment and narrowing his worldview. Looking beyond Frederick, a broader historical pattern emerges. Many rulers who rise through strength and discipline face similar psychological trajectories. Initial vulnerabilities manifest as authoritarian control, which power then amplifies, often leading to isolation and deteriorating judgment. From Roman emperors to modern dictators, the cycle repeats: early psychological wounds, the intoxicating grip of power, and ultimately decline through alienation and rigidity. Frederick's story fits this archetype, offering timeless insights into the human side of history's great figures. Reflecting on Frederick's life invites a deeper philosophical contemplation. Power, at its core, is a paradox. It promises control, order, and achievement, yet it demands a surrender of vulnerability and openness. Frederick's iron discipline brought Prussia order and strength, but it cost him his emotional freedom and, ultimately, his peace. His life warns that the pursuit of control, especially through force and isolation, is a fragile foundation. True strength may lie not in iron wills, but in the willingness to embrace imperfection and connection. Frederick the Great stands as both a monument to human capability and a mirror of profound psychological complexity. His reign teaches us how power shapes identity, sometimes into something unrecognizable. The sharpening of discipline can become the dulling of empathy. In understanding his story, we glimpse not only the machinery of empire, but the fragile humanity beneath, reminding us that history is not just about the powerful, but about the costs they bear in their relentless quests. This duality in Frederick's character, the iron discipline that forged a kingdom, and the emotional isolation that marked the man, reveals a timeless truth about the burdens of leadership. His psychological landscape was shaped by external forces and internal battles. The strict, militaristic environment of his upbringing implanted a blueprint of control that served as both weapon and chain. His relentless striving for perfection was less about desire for glory and more a desperate shield against vulnerability. One cannot overlook the profound loneliness that power inflicted on him. Frederick's emotional withdrawal, combined with his harsh mandates, alienated those closest to him, including family and trusted advisors. This isolation was not unique to Frederick, but a recurring consequence of supreme authority. The loss of genuine interpersonal connection dulls judgment and narrows vision, creating leaders more reactive than reflective. In Frederick's case, his earlier openness to Enlightenment ideals gradually gave way to defensive rigidity, a defense mechanism against the perceived threats around him. This evolution is also a reflection of the era he inhabited, Europe, in flux, where the pressures of sustaining a growing state required unprecedented levels of control. The broader historical pattern of the 18th century saw monarchs balancing the promise of enlightenment with the demands of absolutism. Frederick's reign symbolizes this tension vividly. His intellectual curiosity pushed for progressive reforms, yet his methods often mirrored the harsh realities of warfare and power politics. The environment around him, marked by constant military conflict, reinforced the necessity of strict discipline, but provided little room for emotional nuance or political flexibility. In the end, Frederick the Great's life invites us to question the true nature of strength. Is power measured only by victories and control, or by the capacity to remain psychologically whole amid immense pressures? His legacy challenges us to look beyond the historic achievements and recognize the personal costs cloaked beneath iron will. It underscores that leadership, when severed from empathy and openness, risks becoming an isolating fortress, one that confines both ruler and realm. Frederick's story remains a potent lesson in the psychology of power, a reminder that the outward display of strength often masks a landscape of complexity and contradiction. It compels us to consider how the structures of power shape not only history, but the inner worlds of those who wield it. In reflecting on his life, we encounter the profound ambiguity of greatness, a reminder that behind every discipline lies a human story, fragile and flawed.